Sharon does not have a camera, or else she would put video on.
Oh, okay. Sharon, we forgive you. Can you put a
Sharon was
picture?
in our challenge. She won the NOAA membership, and someone is building her tiny home for her.
All right.
Healthy tiny home builders, I believe it is. Of course I remember.
Cool.
Tiny healthy homes. I knew healthy was in there somewhere. We have to get him to join.
Looks like we lost Scott, but I'm sure he'll come back in. Might have had a glitch.
Oh, well, he said that thunderstorm was coming through.
Give him a minute. We can go ahead and get started when you're ready, but hopefully he'll be on before we need to chat.
Yes. Well, alrighty, I'll let you start after I say my little spiel. Good evening, everyone, and happy Wednesday. We're happy you guys are here to join us for Tiny House Community Development. Oh, it's 4:07. That might be, excuse me, might be Scott.
Well, while she's talking to Scott, guys, welcome. One of the things that we love about these workshops is they're just raw. They're just real and raw. We have internet glitches, we have things that happen, and yet we push through it, So
Yes.
anyway, I'll put.
You're gonna have to fake it till he gets on. He did say he lost his internet connection, so he will be with us as soon as possible.
All right.
Anyway, I was going to say welcome, everyone. We're so glad you guys have joined us tonight for Tiny House Village Community Development. Scott, well, Robin will talk about Scott, but I just want to say tomorrow is our inspector chat where we'll have our dedicated and super great NOAA certified inspectors. They'll be answering questions. I'm not sure if they're going to have a subject to talk about, but we're going to just get started with them. Same time, same place tomorrow. And with that, I'll hand it over to Robin, and you can take over now, Robin. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Leanne. Thank you, Leanne. And yes, once again, welcome everyone. And yeah, we will have an agenda for tomorrow. We like to go through our inspectors. They run into things along the way that specific to tiny houses. And I know one of the items is waterproofing on the roof that we'll have on the agenda for tomorrow. But that's tomorrow. Today is community development. And until Scott gets here so I can introduce him, what I thought I would do is share some communities so we know what we're talking about. I'll share some communities that I'm familiar with. If I can share my screen. And when Scott gets on, let me know and I'll kind of turn things over. This is Wicasa in Colorado. Some of you may be familiar with this. They are all tiny houses on wheels. And it's a nice little community that is sitting in a wooded area legally in Colorado, and they're Airbnb type things. So if ever you want to stay in a tiny house, that's a good one. This is another one that is this was a tiny house festival that they had, but they also had a community, and if I can get to that one, which is not coming up, let me get to that. There it is. Okay, this is Escalante Village. They have some tiny houses on wheels, and they have some foundation homes in this particular one. I don't want that one. Here's one in Mallard Lake that they were just selling tiny house lots, and they're sold out. They sold every one of them. So wanted to talk a little bit about community first, which we'll use in our talk and in our example. while we're talking today, Tiny House Community First is in Texas, Austin, Texas. And they started out with some mobile loaves and fishes out of a food truck, and they developed into what you see here, which is a community of RVs, tiny houses on wheels, tiny houses, and there's 100 RVs and RV homes in this phase one. There's 110 in phase two, and I think they have a phase three going on right now. So this is a large. They have right here. There's like a movie theater, outdoor movie theater space. They have places where the community of homeless or learning trades like mechanics. They have a mechanics shop. They have a garden. They also teach them crafts, and they sell crafts at their little store on place. So this is a whole process here that was designed and built. And there's also I could pull up while Scott's getting his stuff up there. I can pull up one more. If you guys bear with me. Lake Dallas, Texas.
Thank you.
Tiny homes. Can you guys Airbnb, VRBO apartments, where is the best one? Lake Dallas, Texas, there it is. All right, let me share my screen again. Can you guys put in the chat that you can hear me? I just want to make sure that I'm going out to everybody. And secondly, I want to let you know that if you do have questions along the way here, that you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you, or you can unmute so you can ask your question. This is Lake Dallas, Texas, and this was a community of 1 acre, and the guy had a house on it, but it was a broken down house. And let me see if I have any more. You guys can look all of this stuff up. Thought he had some pictures. Yeah, here's some pictures of the houses. These are all NOAA certified that are in here. So he basically just took his 1 acre and he put it what we're going to talk about, and Scott's going to show us some site plans and some what he calls grids. And he put a grid together of where he's going to put the 13 tiny houses, where the parking is, where the landscaping is, and took it to his county commissioners. And he had to jump through a few hoops for water and sewer, but it already had the infrastructure on there for the house of water, sewer, and electric. So it wasn't too much for him to turn it into a nice little village there. But that being said, Scott Bantas, our guest, and he's going to be with us on Wednesdays for a while anyway, until we run out of what we're trying to teach you about tiny house communities and tiny house villages and things like that. But he's been a builder developer for 40 plus years. I've known him for about 15 of those. He's a grandfather, and he's also been permitting since 1983. So as you can tell by his white beard, he's been around a while. We're both pretty much old timers. I just have a little more darker hair than he does right now.
I just
anyway,
cover it up with my hat.
Right. We have he has a little PowerPoint put together for us. Feel free to ask questions in the chat or raise your hand during the presentation, and I'll try to interrupt him whenever I can if something this doesn't sound clear. And then if you have some Q&As, we might have some time at the end to do that too. So that being said, Scott, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Welcome, everyone. I thank you for joining us today. I'm not a accomplished speaker, if you will, so but I have been permitting real estate development in Greater Orlando. I usually stick on about a 2-hour rubber band to Orlando, and when I go past that, I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm pretty cognizant of what's going on here. I've permitted about 85 total projects, including master plan communities, I'm doing a mixed-use project right now in a little town called Deltona with commercial apartments and some industrial. I did infrastructure and finished permitting a development for a Lennar subsidiary in the late 90s, which was 650 acres. And we did 4 subdivisions, golf course, et cetera. So I'm going to turn on to my shared screen here. And can y'all see that?
We
Robin,
can
can you
see
see my?
it. We can see it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. We're going to start out. I'm going to give you a sample of our company and what we're doing here, but this is just one part of a one little niche in the whole arena of tiny homes and affordable or attainable housing. We're getting away from the word affordable since it seems to have connotations with a lot of people in the public of not so nice housing. So we're going to the word attainable, and that came from one of the assistants to a Seminole County, which is the county I live in, commissioners, who's in charge of the affordable housing for Seminole County. They, when I met with her one day, and she said, please, let's not use the word affordable anymore because we're getting a lot of negative feedback from our constituents. So DreamQuest is a company that a friend and I started, and we're just getting ready to do our first development. We have our first piece under contract. He's more in charge of vertical construction, and I'm kind of the horizontal. I'm a dirt guy. So this particular one we're going to get into in a little while as kind of a model for just this niche. But before we get into that, let's go into some things that'll be that I think you'll enjoy. So,
Hey, Scott, can
Yeah.
I get you to click on slideshow up there? So I think that'll make it a little bit bigger. If you click on slideshow at the top, right
Yeah.
there, and then click
Okay.
on current slide. Well, you don't want
something like that. Is that better?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
much better. And-
I believe we're considering this to be a land development series where over the course of numerous weeks, we'll talk about various facets of how to get your tiny home development approved. Most of my experience is in Central Florida, but I have friends that are doing developments in other areas, and we'll talk about those too. The probably Central Florida or Florida in general, maybe some of the hardest places to permit outside of maybe California and some other places that are highly restricted. But some things, that's what we're going to concentrate on to start with. We're going to get into the types. So we have a pocket neighborhoods, which is what we're doing, DreamQuest. And we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Then we have a grid street, which we consider to be normal neighborhood development. That's where there's a street and the houses are on either side of the street. And then, you have an entrance to your community and the streets wind around and maybe there's an amenity center or whatever. And then there's a scattered lot program. We have one of those going in downtown Orlando where there are various vacant lots or old houses that they're knocking down to build smaller affordable houses, some of which are tiny houses, some of which are just smaller homes. Then we always need to look at what's the use of your product. Is it going to be rental or is it going to be for sale, and how that works? And then there's a whole new group coming into Airbnb, which is resort type usage. Hey, Robin, hang on a second. I got the wrong slideshow up again. So let me get out of here 1 minute and then let me change.
Yeah, and while he's doing that, I'll tell you about a friend of mine, Jeremy Ricky, that basically bought an RV park, an existing RV park that already had the infrastructure in it. And what he did is he went around to the tiny house shows, and at these tiny house shows, these guys bring their houses in for sale, and they do not want to bring them home. So he was able to get some real good deals on tiny houses, just giving you some plugs and some ideas for you when you do your own development. A real good deal on tiny houses. Then he put them in this RV park, and they stay rented out, and so they're all Airbnb type things. And then as I was telling you about the Lake Dallas development there, everyone can do that. What I would suggest, if you do something like Terry Lathrop did, is find a piece of piece of property. This one was 1 acre and with an existing structure on it. It was a broken down house, but it came with electric and plumbing and water and sewer. And then don't buy it, but put a deposit down on it. This is just a strategy that's to save your money. Put a deposit down on it and have a contingency that you get council approval for what your design is for your house. If it's going to be 13 tiny houses, then put that in the contingency, and then go to the city council with it. And with what we're going to learn here in these several weeks, we'll teach you who you need on your team, how to develop that, and then at that point, take it to your city council. And once you get that approval, that is when the contingency goes away and you close on that lot. If the commissioners say there's no way, Jose, it's not going to happen, or you run up against snags in the entitlements, what we call the entitlements, the entitlements basically are all the approvals that you need to get to say, okay, you haven't done anything yet. You haven't turned the first third over yet, but you got to get all the entitlements in line. Once you have all of those, then you close. If you don't, you say, well, I didn't get approval that I wanted to, and because you had the contingencies in there, you can get your deposit back and then go try it on the next one. So just throwing out some ideas, guys, for those of you that haven't done development before. And Scott, are you ready to come back?
Yeah, I'm ready to come back. And we'll talk about that whole entitlement process and how that works and the easy ways to do a lot of that in upcoming sessions. So here we go. Do you have it now? Am I back?
I see it. I see it. But if you click on slideshow and current, then from the current slide.
Okay.
All right.
Here we go. All right. So go ahead.
Use your down and up arrow or your mouse or something. You can move it when you go to the next slide.
All right. So when we look at affordability, just generally, we have basically 3 categories that everybody looks at, which is very low income, which are people who make 50% of the median family income. Then there's low income, which I'm sorry, the very low is 30%. 50% is low income. Then there's another low income category at 80% of median income. The affordability, and we're going to have another slide about this in a minute, but affordability depends on family size, which also factors into that equation. Location factors, where are you? What state you're in? What is your local government? Is it a city, a burg, a county? And what type of the ease of the government approval, the zoning, future land use regulations, et cetera. We'll talk more about that in a minute. The building department information, a lot of areas have an approvable house size. And they, for example, a lot of places, our houses run from 396 up to 560 square feet. And a lot of municipalities and counties will not allow that under the current regulations. Sometimes we can get around that by doing what they call a PUD or PD, which is a planned unit development or plan development. We'll talk more about that later. What kind of product are you doing? Are you doing a tiny house on wheels? Are you doing tiny houses on foundations? Are you doing container homes? And then other factors that come into it is the proximity to public transportation, employment centers, availability of public utilities, water, wastewater, which they call sewer, electric, and then what kind of neighbors do you have? for an example, a good friend of mine's doing a project right now, a 93-acre resort in the low hill country in Texas. So we were talking about putting some tiny houses on it. And I said, well, what's your government process? And he said, well, we went and met with the guy who kind of runs the town. And we went down to the building and zoning department, and they said, well, you're going to be bringing a bunch of fancy RVs in. You probably should have paved roads. So, we kind of laughed about that because, I mean, that's all he's going to have to do is do that. And then he's going to run public utilities to it, but the utilities are pretty close, the water and the sewer. And so the city is actually going to assist him in running those lines to make sure they get to his property. Versus in Florida, what we have here is we have zoning, and then we also have what they call future land use. So those two need to be compatible in order for any development to happen. We need planning, civil engineering, and in most cases, we have to have an updated survey with topo, which is topography, which is the elevation changes on the site. And then in most instances nowadays, we have to have a tree survey. In Volusia County, for example, where we're doing right now, we have to preserve 10% of the site with the existing trees. So fortunately, they'll let us use the buffers for that, but that's a fairly onerous requirement when you have a heavily treed site. It makes you want to go to a site that's already been cleared instead of that.
Hey,
Other things that you'll...
Speaking of trees, I understood that in some areas, and I don't know if it's Florida, but in some areas of the country, if you cut an 8-inch tree down or remove a tree that's 8 inch in diameter, you have to replace whatever you took down with so many seedlings to equal that tree. And what is that called when they have to do that?
Sort of a mitigation or restoration. We have that. Most of the tree surveys have 6-inch mean, the DBH, what they call, which is about chest high on most people. What's the diameter of the tree? If it's 6 inches or more, you have to count it. Some areas, there's a couple areas here and there that have 5 inches in Central Florida. Most of them are 6. So you can go in and clear stuff that's under 6 inches, and it makes it a lot easier to do the trees surveyed. Heavily wooded sites get very expensive to do tree surveys. We also have geotechnical, which is soil testing. They have environmental, if there's any wetlands on there. If you're by a lake, you need an archaeological survey. And then we always need a landscape architect. There's all kinds of government approvals. So all this process can go from a low of 6 months to a year and a half or more. We had one that I permitted in St. Augustine, which was actually in St. Johns County, that took us almost 3 years to do.
Have you run into any endangered species like the turtle or the tiger beetle or anything like that on any of your developments?
Yeah, we have a thing in Polk County, which is down just south of Disney, on the other side of Disney, which has been heavily developed with resort rentals. And now with a lot of permanent residents that all work up in the Disney area and all the hotels and all the service things there, they have a thing called the blue-tailed skink. F-K-I-N-K, the blue-tailed skink. And it's blue and it's legless. And if you have a site that's higher than elevation 84, which we get toward nosebleed here, and we lose our breath and our ears pop when we start getting up over 84 much here in Florida. But and you have to do a study for those, and it's very expensive. And you can only do the study between March 15th and the beginning of May. So if you're trying to buy a site in that particular location, and you're going to let's say contract for it in June or July or September or October, you have to wait until March to do your skink study. So that would be something, that's a local deal that you have to sort of know about. Volusia County, where we are, has a number of the birds, different kind of birds. They have a thing called the scrub jay, which looks like a blue jay. And it has a pretty healthy radius around it. And then we have eagles occasionally. We have rural eagles in Florida versus urban eagles. A rural eagle has a 1,500 foot radius and has certain times of the year when you can actually move dirt around and actually develop the property. The rural eagle is 2,500 feet radius. So it takes a lot of land out if you're not careful. So there's some things to know. We also have a lot of wetlands throughout Central Florida, and many people in different areas have wetlands, and very often they don't want us to do anything to disturb the wetlands. So if you have a very, very expensive area, they had some near Disney where the land was worth, $800,000 to $1 million an acre, they could afford to plow up a couple of acres. And a lot of times, depending on the quantity and quality of the wetlands, it's a 10 to 20 to 1 ratio. So you disturb 2, you may have to do 20 to 40 acres somewhere else in the same drainage basin. So it becomes a big game. People have set up what they call mitigation banks, where you can buy credits in the mitigation banks. We also have gopher tortoises, which is a specific endangered species of turtle. And again, if you have gopher tortoises, right now it's costing if you want to move them from your site to what they call a recipient site, it's anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 just to reserve the land to put the turtle, not including somebody to pick it up and go through the permitting and deliver it to the recipient site. So a turtle could cost you anywhere from $6,000 to $12,000, $15,000 if you're not careful.
For one turtle. Yeah, so guys, I didn't want to get into the weeds. We can do that at a later date, but I just in that one little item, that's something that you need to be concerned about when you're thinking of development of land. So yeah, carry on, Scott. I sorry I digressed, but that was kind of an interesting digression.
Yes, and the other thing we look at is utility connections. Typically in Florida, if we start to go to outlying areas, there's no public water and sewer. And when we start clustering the units like we're doing with like our development, we can get up to about 10 units per acre. And when we start getting to that kind of clustering, it's going to require public water and sewer. So that's a discerning item when you're doing your land acquisition. So, and then it goes back to the public transportation and those employment centers and all that. You typically want to be in some kind of those areas. Florida has an interesting law, which is House Bill 1339, which is referenced here. And what they passed, that was a year ago, January, in 2020, the state of Florida passed a law which allows local governments to override existing zoning and future land use in order to for a developer to provide affordable housing. The problem is that most of the jurisdictions don't know about it. They're just starting to learn about it. I'm becoming kind of the spokesperson for going around to a lot of cities and counties and talking about all of this. But there's House Bill 1339, which allows them to do it. Volusia County, and down at the bottom of the page here, there's a website that you can look at if you want to go in and look at an extremely comprehensive affordable housing plan. They spent a lot of time on it. I was on one of the committees that I was on the Land Development Regulation Committee. They had 3 subcommittees that helped put together this plan, but their plan is extremely comprehensive and talks about a lot of this stuff. But there's another thing in Florida that we have called Appendix Q, which is an actual building department code that allows a special code for tiny houses built on foundations that are 400 square feet or less. So they have different regulations for stairs and lofts and different things in that. That's called Appendix Q. We'll talk about that in further detail another day. Some resources for you if you're interested. We have a couple of books to read. There's a book called Pocket Neighborhoods by Ross Chapin. It's a really neat, good pictorial book. It's got a lot of pictures in it. It shows Savannah and Charleston and some other areas. They get into the whole pocket neighborhood thing, which we'll talk about more in a little bit. And there's a couple other books, The Affordable City and by Shane Phillips. and The Walkable City by Jeff Speck. Those are both good books. One's kind of city oriented, and the other one is about, but they talk about affordability, and they go into a lot of factors that if you want some interesting reading and some interesting things to be able to talk to your local government about, they're a good read. All of that's available easily on Amazon if you're interested. There's also down at the very bottom of the page, helpful organization. We all have heard of NIMBYs, the Not in My Backyard. They actually started a group called Yes in My Backyard, which is YIMBY, YIMBI. There's a website down there if you'd like to jot that down. I think you're going to be able to see these slides later, right, Robin?
We are, and also if you would send them to us, then Leanne can post them on the Facebook page.
Okay.
So we'll make that available to you guys.
A couple of other things when we get into this a little bit. Here's another website. This is the HUD, Housing and Urban Development, 2022 Income Unit Summary. There's the website. In this particular case, if you go, I don't know if you can see my cursor right here, there's a drop-down box. So in this particular one, I picked up Deltona, Daytona, and Ormond, which is basically the Volusia County MSA or the Daytona Beach MSA, which is a market statistical area MSA. So what HUD has done is they've come up with these income limit summary, and there's some, maybe 400 different MSAs listed. So you may be in Charlotte, North Carolina, or Austin, Texas, or wherever you are. You can go in and click where I'm clicking right here, and you'll pop up your area, and then you can see what that income limits are. I thought this was.
I don't think we see your cursor, but it's at the bottom of the page, guys.
Okay, it's right underneath where it says behind my FY 2022 HUD metropolitan FRM areas. It's down there. There's a drop-down box.
Right. Select your.
You see it now?
Yeah, now I see it. Yeah, now we see
it's
it.
right. It's right here. If you can see where that is, and then you can enter a different state here if you want. So what it does is it gives you the income limit. So it's really kind of interesting. At very low income, at 30%. I'm sorry, at 30% here. 2 persons in Volusia County that are people that make $18,800, and believe it or not, I recently attended a seminar in Volusia County where the head of the Florida Chamber of Commerce spoke, and he talked about areas in Central Florida, and we're running about, in general Central Florida, almost all the counties are running around 13%, 11 to 13% of the population is living in poverty, in what they consider to be a poverty level. So Volusia County and Seminole County, which are right next to each other, and Seminole's county just north of Orlando, kind of a bedroom community. Seminole has much higher income limits, but in there, both the counties have around 500,000 people. If you take a look at, 11% of 500,000 is about 55,000 people living in our neighborhoods that are in the poverty level. So to me, that's an astoundingly high number. So down here at the bottom, I did a kind of a rule thing that's really important for us in real estate, is whether we're doing rental or for sale product. This doesn't really apply to the Airbnb stuff, but the 30% rule is that residents in your projects are limited to spending 30% of their annual income either for rent or for their PITI, and theoretically it's supposed to include utilities. So if you looked at a very low income of 50% of median income for 2 people, and that's this circle right here, 18.8 times 30% is 56.40 a year. When you divide that by 12, it's 470 a month. Versus a low income, which is here, the 80% of median income is 15,042 or 1253 a month. our houses, we're working to shoot onto the people that are making 80 to 120% of median income, which is what they consider to be affordable. But that's obviously the higher end of that. But I thought it was really important that if you're going to do anything in doing any type of development, you need to know what you're going to be doing. Are you doing rentals? So I have a friend who's up in Ormond Beach. He has a nonprofit, and he wants to do rentals for people who make 30% of median income. So he's going to be restricted to $470 a month for his units. And so he's going to have government subsidy in order to make that work. So you can take a look at wherever your areas are and find whether or not, you know, what you're doing makes sense or not. So here again this is about DreamQuest, which is our company. But this again is just to serve as a sample of one narrow niche in the tiny home process, if you will. So this could be a model for you, or you can take it and modify it to fit what you're doing and what your needs are and what you're really looking for. So our
guys,
mission
this
is
would be a sort of a business plan that you would put together for whatever your development or your project might be. This is just a sample of what one looks like. And we're going to go through this pretty quickly, but it still has a lot of good stuff in it. Just keeping an eye on time. We've got about 10 more minutes, maybe 15 max.
okay.
So, and then we'll open it up for questions too. We want to have a little bit of time for that.
Okay, so what we want to do is build a large quantity. What we're talking about is we'd like to build 2,000 or 3,000 of these tiny homes in the next 3 years, which is a pretty aggressive program. And then we're going to target our homes to sell at between 60 to 80% of typical starter home prices in the area. We want to reach what they call the missing middle, which are those homeowners that make 80 to 120% of the area median income. That's typically your fire department, your teachers, police officers, et cetera. That's what they're calling the missing middle. We are encouraging high social connectivity. I'll talk about that in a minute. They're energy stingy, so we're going to have extremely low utility bills. They're rated for us at 200 miles an hour, which is pretty important here. We just had a hurricane come through, and they're built on site for long-lasting value. Our 3-year goal is to do a couple thousand houses. We'd like to transition into be a national brand, and we're looking at providing consulting for other organizations interested in providing tiny home neighborhoods. One thing that's really interesting, we have a group here called the Sharing Center in Longwood, Florida, Seminole County. They provide a lot of services, social services for homeless people. Typically the people, churches and people that are involved in social services typically don't have a whole lot of knowledge about real estate. Those of us that are in the real estate game don't have a whole lot of knowledge about social services. So it's a really kind of an interesting mix. I'm talking to a group outside of Roanoke, Virginia, and another one out in North Carolina about, they're both nonprofits that are interested in helping their people, but they have no idea how to go about providing affordable housing or attainable housing or workforce housing to their constituents. So that's kind of an interesting idea. Going specifically into our site, this is DeLand, Florida. Starting here where my cursor is downtown DeLand, which is the head of Volusia County government. So all the government services are there, including the courthouse, et cetera. Right in that same area is Stetson University. Over here, we have a big hospital, Advent, which is one of the largest providers, at least in Florida, of healthcare. Coming up here, this road is 1792. This splits to 92. This goes directly into Daytona, right past the racetrack. And just north of that is the Lowe's and the Publix and the Super Walmart, and come up a couple more miles and you have us. So we're on a 4-lane divided highway with public transportation, public utilities, and relatively close to employment centers, which are important.
So
Our
guys,
features-
can you back up a little bit onto that one?
Yeah.
And the reason for this, what we're showing you here is just pretend you're talking to a county commissioner or a city commissioner. These are the types of things that you want to be able to show to him when you're talking to him about the site and trying to get approval on it. Sorry, I wanted to make that note.
No
too.
worries. It's a combination of factors, and we'll spend more time on that next week. But as we get into it, there's a combination of factors that go together to make a good package. We're doing high quality energy stingy 396 to 568 on foundations. There'll be block or steel frame construction. The homes are arranged in a circle, and I'll show you some site plans in a minute, that promote social connectivity, the whole know your neighbor deal. I'm fortunate, I live in a small area in a big neighborhood, but our small area, everybody's been here for a really long time. I've been in my same house for 37 years, and all my neighbors around me, except one, have been here for a long time. We have a 10-foot front porch that faces this core central area. It's bringing the outside in. In the core amenity area, we have fire pits, picnic tables, barbecue grills, seating benches, small pavilion. We'll have a community center with laundry and vending machines, a small meeting room and a bathroom and a like a micro kitchen. That's important because a lot of people don't want to take the 3 foot by 3 foot roughly, or 30 inch by 30 inch, call it 3 feet by 3 feet area out of their 400 square foot house for laundry. It also serves as a social area where people can go and talk. We'll have a community garden area, connected walkways, parking exterior to the circle, water features, extensive xeriscaping, and permaculture are natural Florida products that use low water, etc. We're going to have what's called low impact development. A lot of our retention is going to be in the parking lot, underneath the parking lot, because we have a high and dry site. And we'll have what they call green stormwater management practices. Some of what we're doing, these two items particularly here, are hot buttons for Florida planning departments. Everybody's talking about low impact development and green stormwater practices, which typically are a little bit more expensive, but in the long run, when you start to look at the long-term viability of your project, they'll save you a lot of money over time. So investing a few extra dollars at the beginning, plus providing these that the government agencies all would love to see, is going to give us a leg up in dealing this. We front US 17, which is a 4-lane divided highway, and that's close to stuff. We have 2.46 acres, all high and dry, flat topo, no environmental issues, and utilities are available.
Before you move on, back up one time. Can you give us a real quick definition of low impact development and a definition of green stormwater management? I don't even know what that is.
Low impact development, for example, our walkways that are going to be inside the community, and when we look at the site plan, I'll show you where they're going, but those will be made out of pervious pavement so that the water will go through the pavement. Our parking lot will be pervious pavement where the water will go through, and we may be using turf, what they call turf blocks in certain areas. Turf block is very similar to a cinder block, if you know what a cinder block looks like. So it's got holes in it. And what you do is you put those in the ground, and then you can plant grass in it. And so the grass comes up, but when it rains, the water goes into the block, if you will, and it drains down through the concrete block. You put a little bit of rock underneath it with a geofabric, which is keeps the dirt in, but lets the water go through.
Right.
You put that down, and then, so what happens is a lot of the site becomes retention. We
Right.
have to have retention here in Florida. In a lot of places you have to, especially if you start getting in hilly areas too. It works really well if you can tell local government that you're doing following practices that are low impact, have low impact on the environment.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, here's our site plan. What we're doing here is we're clustering the homes around the circle. This little thing right here is the front porch. The front porch. Those are all 10 feet deep. Again, we're trying to bring the outside in. Inside in here, it's not shown, but there's a flagpole, there's barbecue grills, fire pits. There'll be walkways that connect all these units to the center, and then there'll be areas walkways again that'll connect to the parking. This may seem far away, but from the parking place to here is only about 150 feet, which is quite a bit, actually lower than a lot of the apartment complexes that we have in Orlando now. So there's really no stress here. This is a community building over here. Over in this area will be a garden area. And part of this extra green we have down in here is all part of that tree preservation area. We put our parking external to the site. We don't want any interior streets. So part of our brand will be that there will be no interior streets. We don't want to get into that look where you have like a normal streetscape, if you will. We want to.
Is that why you call it a pocket neighborhood?
That's why we call it pocket neighborhood.
Okay.
This particular site lends us to, there's an old lady that owns almost the identical tract, same size, etc., adjacent here, and she lives in a condo in Daytona, and she has no interest in selling, but she's getting pretty old. We figure at one point she's going to die and the kids are going to want to get rid of it, so we have put the entrance over here so that we can expand and do another circle, and I'll show you a site plan with that in a few minutes.
So that's
Again,
the 2.2 acres there? That's 2.2 acres that we're looking at right now?
2.46.
2.46, okay. And you got
370 feet of frontage with 300, a little over 300 feet of depth. The social connectivity is really important. You'll find that some of the older folks that'll live here, a younger couple may be over here in this unit and they want to go out to dinner. This lady will come over and babysit the kids because everybody gets to be friends. You know, Friday night, somebody brings the graham crackers, somebody else brings the chocolate, somebody brings the marshmallows and sit around the fire pit and, you know, sing Kumbaya, hold hands, and eat s'mores. So kind of the theory. We have, this is a 500 square foot community building. And over here, the features, low workforce attainable. Those are the terms we're using. Low impact, energy stingy, zero escaping, community garden. There'll be a fence around here, over here, and down here. And then across the front will be like a picket fence, open fencing, street side. We probably won't have 3 steps up, but this was kind of a neat little picture to kind of give you the idea of what we're looking at. Big front porch. We're going to be using metal roofs on all our houses. This is a rendering we had of what the community will sort of look like. Parking, again, external, a lot of stuff going on the inside. Here was one that we did, and what's really neat about this type of concept is that it's adaptable to many, many different shape sites. So here was a triangular shaped site. We had an entrance requirement. We had a street up here, we had a street down here, so we had to have our entrance be kind of in the middle. This was 750 foot of frontage. We had to be 300 feet away from each intersection. So we put the parking in here. We did a circle here and a circle here. And we put the community area back up in this corner. Again, same thing, which would have the fire pits, barbecue grills, small pavilion, etc. Here we have retention here, and we would have retention on the pervious surface in the parking lot. We'll talk more about that later. There's a thing called exfiltration trenches that we can use in Florida. They do that for all the condos and the high-rise type buildings. Here was a project that
the water will go through it, right, guys? Right, Scott?
Yeah.
Pervious means water will flow through it. Impervious means it won't let the water go through.
Yeah, what we do in the just quickly is that there's big pipe underneath the parking lot that are covered by gravel and a filter fabric and sand, etc. So when the water goes through, it goes into the pipe and it collects in the pipe. So it works like a pond in essence. This is one that Robin shared with me from Austin, Texas, Community First Village. This would be an example of what I would consider to be a normal, typical street design, where you got the roads and then the houses on either side of the streets, and you have maybe a central amenity area, et cetera. And but you can see the houses are all dotted. So this becomes what I would consider to be a more normal neighborhood thing. Also, when you get into the scattered lot program, if you're looking, let's say at Detroit, for example, has a very, very active scattered lot program right now. They're taking streets, like let's say this street right here, and they're coming in and they're putting tiny houses on either side of the street. So they knock down everything of the old stuff and they're putting the tiny houses in there. And that would be an example of a scattered lot type program. Here's one that we did for a site in Rockledge, Florida, which is Brevard County, which is east of Orlando over towards the ocean. Here in this particular case, we had the road up here. Because it was a long site and not very deep, what we did was we created a parking area here, parking area on the right side, and then a parking area in the center that came to the community building. And again, this was to minimize the walking distance. Everybody had to walk to their thing. What we'll have at the community center and out here, maybe in a little, shed area, is carts where you can unload your groceries or, stuff that you buy and put it on the cart, wheel it to your unit, and wheel the cart back. Everybody can kind of use that together. Our floor plans, these are 18 feet wide. This particular one is 396 square feet. We have not including the front porch. So the front porch is 10 by 18, which is a pretty good size. We wanted a size big enough that they could put a swing, a swinging seat in, or you can actually put chairs in and walk around it. That was really important to us. This area from here to here is our core area where the kitchen, the bathroom, and all of this is. That stays the same no matter what our floor plan is. So then we have back here a one bedroom. And again, we can modify the walls. This could be a studio. You could take all these walls out here. And what we'll probably do here is do a sliding door instead of a swing door. This is, again, the same, second one, whoops. The second unit with it's got 2 bedrooms back here, different closet arrangement, but this same core area is exactly the same. This one's 468 square feet. Again, it's 18 feet wide.
And all of the front porches on this project are facing the green area?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You can see the front porches on here. They're all facing into the green area, and they'll all be connected, and this will have really nice walkways, et cetera, around here that'll connect it all. There'll be features in here with a lot of landscaping, probably a couple of water features, maybe a little fountain, et cetera. What we want to do with our projects is make them like demonstration type projects where the city, or in this case, Volusia County, we're working very, very closely with their planning and zoning department. And off the record, they are going to use us to be their example for trying to get a House Bill 1339 approved, where we don't have to go through. They can administratively change the zoning on the property to allow this development to happen, which is really kind of exciting. If we get that done, that's something that we'll take all over the state as an example. And I have a second site that's going to be 90 units that we're looking at in Volusia County also. A local city has, Holly Hill has a site that we may be able to put 90 rental units on, but they would be tiny house, but it would be a rental community. So we're just starting to investigate that right now. One of the issues, which is really kind of interesting, and this is, again, a local thing, but Volusia County has 7 county council members. 6 of them are up for re-election in November. So what they're pretty much saying, and the only one that's not is the chairman, who is really behind us, and he's really a good guy, and he really likes everything that we're proposing to do here. And but the other 6 are everybody's afraid to make a decision. We just lost a deal, not a tiny house deal, but another deal on an affordable type cottage home type project in a city called Titusville, which is over by the space program. And we lost a city council vote 3-2 because 2 of the commissioners were up for election. And the 4 neighbors came. One of them was a half a mile away to complain about the project. It wasn't, I was just a consultant to it, so I didn't have anything to say about it, but I'd have tabled it until after the election. The vote, because in Titusville, they have a rule that if you get denied, you have to wait a year before you can go back in again.
So this is what we're talking about here, guys, is important. It's called politics. And, I really don't like politics, but it's the thing we have to do to live with. And what he said about the House bill that passed is a Florida bill, but there are, if you're not from Florida, which a lot of you may not be, you can use this bill as a model bill to take to your jurisdiction and say, hey, would you pass something like this here? And here's a model, because they really don't like having to write bills, but if they have something to fashion it after, they can just change the names and put their name, put their state. I think this is a state bill here that you're talking about. So it would have to be the state would do it. And then there's a lot of places that are very tiny house friendly. I know Jim Majority of New Hampshire is really tiny house Florida friendly. So if you guys wanted to take something like this, if you're from that area, then you could give it to him and he'd say, oh, great. This is something that we could just cut and paste, so to speak, and create something in your area so that you don't have to go through the whole rezoning of the land. You can just do something. What was it called when they go over the head of the zoning department?
It's in Florida, it's House Bill 1339. I'll be happy to send Leanne the link to that. I have several links. One is the actual House bill, which is 95 pages, which you have to be really, really interested to read that. I have a 30-page summary that somebody did, which is like the Cliff Notes for the bill. I also can, I'll send her the Appendix Q, which is the Florida Building Code for, and that's part of the National Building Code, by the way.
Yeah, I think Appendix Q we probably already have. It's called AQ now in the 2021. But yeah, I think we already have that one on our website. So we're using that in our inspections and all of tiny houses. So we're familiar with that one. We're good with it.
Okay. Anybody has any questions, feel free to email me if you'd like. I'll be happy to answer to the best of my ability and help you with anything that you would like. And if you like this, let Robin and Leanne know, and then we'll continue it, and I'll get into more detail next week and the weeks
Yeah, we definitely
thereafter.
would want to know questions. This is your program, guys. So we want to do what you want. But you don't know what you don't know, and that's why we're kind of doing an overview right now of what things are doing. Is that did you have anything else on your slide presentation there? That
Nope, I'm done. That was it.
Okay. All right. If you want to stop share, then we can if there's any questions, we can go over that. We got a little bit of time left, but not a lot. Anybody have any questions there, Leanne? Are you still with us, Leanne? I don't hear her. All right, let me look in the chat. I don't see Q&A. I guess we don't have Q&A on this one then, Jordan. I guess we have just chat. Anybody that has a question, raise your hand. If not, I'm going to try to wrap this thing up unless Leanne's going to come on and wrap it up for us. That being said, I'm going to say thank you, Scott. And, this was just an overview, guys. We're going to get into the details of exactly how you can put a team together and do this in your neck of the woods. But that's part of it. You have your building permits side, and then you have your zoning side. And this is more on the zoning, getting zoning approved, but you still have to be aware of the building side of things. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye, and we'll see you tomorrow. Reminder, tomorrow is Inspector Day. And so a lot of the builders love that because they get to see our inspectors and talk to them and ask questions. So we'll see you guys tomorrow.
So long. Thank you.
And Hey, and Scott, just hang on. We're gonna send you another link for a debrief Zoom. After this one. All right, bye, guys.